The Atlanta Braves have ran the NL East for 6 straight years and they're the favorites to do so again. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the rest of the NL East. Who's going to give the Braves the most competition? We'll also touch on that Ohtani news from late last night. All that on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Also, make sure you check out my written work over at BravesToday.com. Whenever I got time to write an article, make sure you read over there. Those guys do a fantastic job of keeping you up to date of everything Atlanta Braves. Make sure you follow the podcast on social media at LockedOn_Braves. Get ready to submit your questions from a tweet that I'll post from LockedOn_Braves on Friday to be included on our Friday mailbag episode. If you're new on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're approaching 9,700. We got a week to go. We need 300, a little over 300 subscribers by opening day to get to 10K. Either way, we're probably on our way there, but would love to get it by opening day. You can help me get there by hitting the thumbs up button on this video. If you're one of my listeners on the podcast, I appreciate you as well. I still listen in audio form, but even if you do, head on over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Several of you have let me know that you do that. Thank you so much for your support here of Locked On Braves. It's also one of our last live episodes of the offseason. During the regular season, don't have as much time to do these. So glad all of you have stuck in with me this offseason, joined some of these live podcasts. Right now, I see Dred Scott, Leland, Argenis of Wolf and Man, Brian Willits, Jeffrey Humphreys, Double A in here as well. Chuck McMillan, thank you so much for joining me here live tonight. And Dred Scott said, my first live chat. Thank you so much for joining the live podcast tonight. As I said in the cold open, today is our NL East preview. If you missed it, we recorded a preview that posted on the channel. It's an MLB preview. It goes through all the divisions. The NL East is in there as well. I am not in that. It's during the period that I was out for the passing of my brother. So I was not part of that NL East discussion. So I wanted to give you my thoughts and really do a deep dive into the NL East on today's podcast. If you strictly just follow the Braves, maybe you don't have as much knowledge about some of the other teams, even in the division, much less the rest of the league. I'm going to try to give you a much better picture of each team in this division, what they have, what's coming, and what their threat level is to the Braves this upcoming season. So hopefully this helps you out as you prepare for the upcoming season. As we look at the NL East, it's a very good division, and it has a lot of good teams in there. Going into last year, I thought it would be a little bit better. Obviously, the Mets spent all that money. Phillies have been spending stupid money for a while, and obviously are a really good team. And you knew the Braves would be in there. It ended up just being the Braves essentially in the regular season. The Phillies obviously made the postseason, as did the Marlins. And the past 2 years, the NL East has sent at least 3 teams to the postseason. So it's been a very good competitive division, even if for the most part, Braves ran away with it last year. The Mets and Braves really ran away with it the year before that. And the Braves have owned it for 6 years now. It's been a very competitive and good division. Now, in terms of bringing home the crown, 3 of the last 5 years, we've seen a different NL East team in the World Series, with 2 of them winning it. So 2 of the last 5 years, an NL East team has won the World Series, with, again, 3 different NL East teams being in 3 of the last 5 World Series. That's a pretty good run as well for the division. And the 9 years before that, only one NL East team made an appearance. That was the Mets in 2015. Going back to 1995, a team from the NL East has won the World Series just 6 times. So not complete domination in the World Series for the NL East, but 6 times since 1995. The Braves and Marlins each winning it twice, and the Phillies and Nats winning it once. Mentioned the Mets, they had an appearance in 2000 in the World Series, also in 2015, like I already mentioned. Phillies had an appearance a couple of years ago in the World Series, also, I believe, after the year, either before or after they won it in the early, I think 2009, they were also in the World Series. So NL East has been a very competitive division for a long time. but it is interesting to look at the World Series champions. It's the Braves and the Marlins that have done it twice since 1995. Nobody else has. Going into this year, the Braves and Phillies are the heavy favorites to make the postseason from this division, while the Marlins and Mets could be fringe contenders, and the Nats are still in rebuild mode. So you just want to go kind of surface level knowledge about each team. That's it. The Braves and Phillies are very good. Mets and Marlins will probably hover around 500, could sneak into the postseason. Nats are still in rebuild mode. But let's dive much, much deeper into each team on the podcast. And we're going to start at the top, excluding the Braves from this discussion, and talk about the Philadelphia Phillies, a team that has knocked out the Braves the last 2 years in the postseason. The Phillies the last 3 years have been on an incline. They've gone from 82 to 87 to 90 wins. And again, they advanced to the NLCS the last 2 years, making the World Series 2 years ago. They are, in my mind, easily the greatest threat to the Braves for winning a seventh straight title. And I've already seen some people in the chat saying you don't want the bye. AA saying I just don't want a 1 or 2 seed. Well, if that's the case, you're going to be cheering for the Phillies this year, because I think they're the only team that has a legitimate chance to take over the NL East and win the division. So again, it's a discussion we've already had. I still think the right move is to go out and win a division. We know the Braves are going to do that. But if anybody is going to surpass the Braves this year, it feels like it's going to be the Phillies. Now, you look at their lineup, and I don't know, when I look at it, I wasn't as blown away as I thought I would be with this Phillies lineup. It's very good. I think it does match up very well with the Braves. It's a powerful 1, 2, 3 in Schwarber, Turner, and Harper. But I have questions about all three of those guys. Has Turner settled in now after the slow, really more than half a season that he had last year? Obviously, he was brilliant the last couple of months, and going into the postseason, what Turner do we see? Do we see that Turner for a whole year, or was those signs of decline in the first half, and he just happened to have a really hot streak to end the year? I tend to think he's still going to be really, really good. Can Harper stay healthy all year long? He's missed significant time the last 2 years, and in 2021, he had minor injuries to his lower back, which he's dealing with back issue right now, his face, his wrist, his shoulder, his forearm, his back again, and his foot. I mean, this is a guy that plays really hard. Credit to him. I've never had more respect for Bryce Harper than I do right now, with the way that he's gone through Tommy John, coming back, playing through all of that to help his team get to the World Series 2 years ago. I've never had more respect for Bryce Harper as a player and a competitor. But bottom line is, he has a lot of injuries and he gets banged up a lot. And there's a good chance he's going to spend some time on the injured list this year. How significant that will be, how long he'll be out, and when will that happen is going to be key for the Phillies this upcoming season. And then Schwarber, can he continue to be such a productive player while hitting 200? He's a good player, and he is somebody that you want at the top of your order where the Phillies put him, because he takes his walks and he hits a lot of home runs, but he doesn't really give you much in between that. If the walks decline, and they were really high last year, even if they come down to 10%, is he still as effective of a player? Even if he's hitting 30, 40 home runs, can he still be as ineffective as a hitter at the top of the lineup if that walk rate regresses a little bit and that on base comes down? So even as good as that 1, 2, 3 is, I'm not taking anything away from him. It is very good. I do have some questions. And then you look at the rest of the lineup, Real Muto and Castellanos, they seem to be in a decline. You look at the metrics that would lead you to believe that they are starting to decline, entering their age 33 and 32 seasons respectively. I think the big thing for the Phillies here in their lineup, can Bryson Stott, can Alec Bohm continue to improve like we saw them last year? Can they continue to improve as they go into their prime years? And can they take over for some of those declining guys like a Real Muto, like a Castellanos? Can they kind of take those spots near the top of the order? Can Bryson Stott hit second if he needs to? Can Alec Bohm hit third if he needs to? Can those two players specifically take another step forward in their progression as they enter their prime years and be impact hitters at the top of the lineup if called upon to do so? So it is a very good lineup. I'm not trying to say that. It's just when I look at it on paper and I compare it to the Braves, I have a lot more questions about the guys in their lineup. And to be fair, a lot of those guys are in their 30s and approaching their mid 30s. So they should be in the twilight of their careers. Although I still think they'll be very effective and good players. It'll most likely be at least a top 10 offense. I think I do have more question marks about their lineup than I do the Braves. Not that this is necessarily a comparison, but again, just going through the Phillies lineup, it's really good, but there are some things there that concern me. As far as the depth for the Phillies, I think it's great. Whit Merrifield was a fantastic signing, and he's going to give them tremendous depth because he can play everywhere, and when he plays, he generally produces. They also have solid defensive replacements and Edmundo Sosa and Christian Pache, so they have really, really good depth on their team. Flipping over to the rotation, Wheeler and Nola at the top can match up with anybody's 1-2. They are entering their age 34 and 31 seasons respectively as well, and they've thrown a ton of innings. That's why they're so valuable, and that's why the Braves were so willing to give Nola a lot of money if rumors are to be believed. And I think they would have gone after Zach Wheeler had he made it to free agency. But those guys are very, very good. The question is behind them. Is the Ranger Suarez of the postseason legit? What can Taijuan Walker give them? And can Christopher Sanchez repeat his success down the stretch from last year when he was really, really good? And metrics like him as well, and some of the changes that he made last year. So it could be a very good rotation, but they have some guys in the back of it that I think need to prove themselves coming into this year. They also have top prospect Mick Abel, who could be ready in 2024 as well. Unfortunately, Andrew Painter, we most likely still won't see in 2024. As far as the bullpen goes, it's very good. It's a deep bullpen with high velocity arms: Alvarado, Hoffman, Soto, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Strahm, Brogdon, Kerkering. They also have prospect Griff McGarry, who, if they turn him into a reliever, could have a big impact in 2024. These are big arms coming out of their bullpen. The only issues they have are command. Sometimes they can get a little erratic, but it is high strikeout stuff. They can get themselves out of jams just as easily as they get themselves into jams. You look at the FanGraphs projections for the Phillies, they have them at 85.1 wins. I tend to think that's very low. I think this is going to be a 90-plus win team if they stay healthy. They have their postseason chances at 57%. I think they're easily going to get at least one of those wild card spots if they don't win the division. Their chances of winning the division, just 6.7%. Their odds of winning the World or getting to the World Series are 2.7%. So it is a very good team. It is the biggest threat to the Braves. I think they will be a postseason team. And I think they'll be very, very dangerous once they get there. Next, we're going to take a look at the rest of the division, go through those teams a little bit quicker, as I really wanted to focus on the Phillies because, like I said, I think they are the team that will push the Braves the most in 2024. But we'll talk about the rest of the division here next. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, or perhaps you're enjoying March Madness this weekend, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. And that includes all of us here at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep you up to date on all of the latest in the world of sports, whether that be March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. And if you get tired of sports, you need a little break, they also have great news outlets, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well that you can check out on the Fire TV channel. So check those out today on Fire TV and devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. Learn more about it at Amazon.com/Fire TV today. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Right now, you can bet on right now you can bet on UConn, you can bet on Auburn. If you happen to forget to fill out your bracket, again, you can bet on each individual game. You can pick on the winner of each region. All of that. Who's going to make the Sweet 16? Who's going to make the Final Four? I did not fill out a bracket. I have maybe watched 10 minutes of college basketball all year, so I can't help you in that regard. But if you're into that, you can see everything over at FanDuel.com/lockedon. If you're like me and you just can't wait for next Thursday to get here to get all the baseball action, they have all the MLB futures lines and bets that you could want as well. Team-specific specials, which are really cool to take a look at. Even if you're not into gambling like me, they still have some really interesting lines that you can take a look at and wonder, will Ron Acuna hit 37.5 home runs this year? Will he go over or under that total? You can look at things like that over at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Also, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn the volume down with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, and then finally, tomorrow we'll have our mailbag episode, the last one before the regular season, so make sure to get your questions in for that. And then on Monday, I will tell you which prospect will be the top prospect in the system at the end of 2024. So looking forward to that next week as we get into opening day week here on the podcast. All right, let's jump into the rest of the division here. We still got 3 more teams to go through. Let's start with the Miami Marlins. As I kind of mentioned at the top, it'd probably be a surprise to many people out there to know that the Marlins have the most World Series championships in the division since 1996. They won in 1997 and 2003. The Braves obviously just have the one, and the Nats and Phillies as well just have one since then. They've also made the postseason 2 of the last 4 years, thanks to the expanded playoff format in 2020. And then again, the past 2 years with them being able to make it last year, despite only having 84 wins. And those 84 wins were the most they've won since 2009. They've won 33. Last year, they won 33 of 47 one-run games they played in. So they were super good, lucky. I don't know what you want to call it. I'm sure the Marlins call it good and everybody else is calling it lucky. But they were really good in one-run games last season. Not much done in the offseason. You listen to Peter Pratt of Locked On Marlins. He talked about that in the NL East preview show that everybody did. The fact that Marlin fans were hoping after making the postseason last year, some young guys coming up that hopefully they were going to build on that. Instead, it was a overhaul in the front office and nothing's really been done. And that kind of gives you a sour feeling about the Marlins going into this season. You look at the lineup, it's a rise. Josh Bell, Jake Berger, who had a big end of the year last season coming over the Marlins. They helped him make a little swing change and was really good. And Jazz Chisholm as well. So a pretty solid top 4. Hoping for a bounce back year from Tim Anderson at shortstop. They have some serious question marks at the bottom of the order. Jesus Sanchez and Brian De La Cruz are entering what should be their prime years. Can they take a step forward and really help out this lineup? Either way, this figures to probably be a pretty weak offense. They were 19th in OPS last year. Wouldn't be surprised if they are around that area again or even lower. And the depth, they have some solid infield depth. Fidel Brujan, Xavier Edwards. So they have some solid players on the infield. Outfield prospect Victor Mesa Jr. could be ready to make an impact in 2024. Their rotation is what was really supposed to carry them, and they have just had a ton of misfortune in the rotation. It's an all-star staff currently injured in Sandy Alcantara, Edward Cabrera, Yuri Perez, and Braxton Garrett. Now, they might get some of those back, Alcantara and Perez. We know Alcantara's done for the year. Perez could be done for the year as well, but the rotation is what they were going to lean on. It's what they've leaned on in the past and supposed to be really good this year. And unfortunately, injuries have really hurt them. They still have Jesus Luzardo. AJ Pucks looked really good transitioning back to the rotation. Ryan Weathers was a top prospect for the Padres. Looked like he might be figuring some things out, and Trevor Rogers as well. So I still expect them to pitch pretty well, but it doesn't seem to be that scary rotation that it could have been if everybody were healthy. In the bullpen, not many proven options there. And while Tanner Scott had a great season last year, he's been awful in spring, whatever that's worth. And before that, he had big control issues. So was last year a little bit of a fluke and he is regressing back to the pitcher he was before? Or is it just, randomness in spring training and small sample sizes? Andrew Nardi might be the next guy up. Sixto Sanchez, remember that name? He could be a sneaky arm to watch in the bullpen if he can put things together. He's had a pretty good spring. You look at FanGraphs, they have them projected to win 80.7 games, so essentially 81 games. Their postseason chances are 30%, chances of winning the division 1.9%, World Series chances 0.9% for the Marlins. Moving on to the Mets, it was a quick pivot for the Mets last year. They went from favorites to selling off the roster, and now they're in a transition year as they look to build to win long term and be a competitive team for years to come instead of just spending unworldly amounts of money each and every offseason. That doesn't mean they won't still be competitive this year. They have some good players from some of all that money that they spent. You got Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso, Starling Marte, who looks healthy, McNeil, and Francisco Alvarez. The lineup should be able to score some runs. And they just signed JD Martinez to 1 year, $12 million, part of the news for today. So that'll be another good bat for them in their lineup. Although that does kind of hurt some of their young players like a Brett Baty and Mark Vientos, who might get some of those at bats in the DH spot. But I think this offense going forward is going to be built around Lindor, Alvarez, Brett Baty, and Mark Vientos. If whichever, or maybe both, hopefully for the Mets, those young guys can figure it out. They do have some top position player prospects like Ronald's brother, Luis Angel Acuna, and Drew Gilbert, who could be ready to contribute this season, sometime this season as well, and would really help out that offense going forward. I like their depth. Omar Narvaez is a really good catcher. Joey Wendell, a really good, just all-around player, especially on the infield. Tyrone Taylor is a really good fourth outfielder. So they have some solid depth there already on their bench. The rotation is where things get really messy. Jose Quintana, Luis Severino, Sean Manaea, Adrian Hauser, and Tyler McGill is their projected rotation right now. Kodai Senga will start the year injured. He's going to try to pitch through it and could be back, May, maybe June, sometime around there. And if he's really good, obviously, when he's healthy and if he can stay healthy and will help solidify that rotation, or at least the top of it. They're hoping, Manaea, Severino can kind of find their former form and put things back together. Adrian Hauser, he's been a solid back of the rotation arm, but there's some serious worries about this rotation. It could go very, very badly. They do potentially have some help coming. Christian Scott's had a good spring, will probably be up soon. Blade Tidwell, Mike Vassell are two arms that might be ready at some point this year. So they do have some young talent on the way, and that's really what this season's going to be about for the Mets, especially you listen to Ryan Finkelstein on the podcast for the NL East preview. He talked about that. This year is really about finding out which of these young guys are going to be ready and part of the future. In the bullpen, Edwin Diaz will be back. You got Ottavino, Rayleigh, Smith, Diekman. Those are all pretty solid arms. Michael Tonkin right now projected to be in their bullpen. You look at their FanGraphs projections, 80.4 wins, postseason chances 28.6, to win the division 1.9%, and World Series 0.7%. So them and the Marlins pretty much in the same boat. And then lastly here, we'll go to the Nats. I honestly think I felt better about the Nats rebuild before last year, and they managed to win 71 games last year. So you would think I'd feel better about it, but I look at the lineup they have, and I look at the rotation, and I look at what's coming, and what's coming should be good on the offensive side, but I'm concerned about the pitching side. My hope for the Nats last year was that Josiah Gray takes a step forward, Mackenzie Gore takes a step forward, and being top of the rotation arms. And while they were solid and they had some good workloads and did some good things, I don't see top of the rotation upside for either of those pitchers at this point. And if that's the case, I'm really worried about their rotation. Cade Cavalli is the guy who could come up and maybe be a solidified top of the rotation arm. They could also, the Nats, when they're ready to spend, have money, they can go out and get guys. But I don't see a lot of hope in that rotation long term. Right now, it's Gray, Corbin, Gore, Irvin, and Trevor Williams. I mean, they're likely to be a bottom five rotation in all of baseball. along with Cavalli. DJ Hers might be an option at some point, but he also has some reliever risk to him. And Jackson Rutledge has had a pretty good spring, and he might be an option at some point this year. On the offensive side of things, CJ Abrams, Lane Thomas both had a bit of a breakout years last season, but they both still have some serious questions about their hit tool and their actual potential. Now, Abrams is just 23, so perhaps there is more growth with him. The rest of the lineup feels like a bunch of 4A players. You're looking at Jesse Winker, Joey Meneses, Joey Gallo, Kybert Ruiz, who's a solid player, Nick Senzel, who they picked up off the scrap heap. Luis Garcia is a fine little hitter, and he's still pretty young. And then you got Victor Robles. Eddie Rosario is a nice depth piece that they do have that they'll probably try to flip at some point, maybe at the deadline, send him back to the Braves. They do have a lot of potential on the position player side of things coming. You got Dylan Cruz, you got James Wood. Both of those guys could potentially see time in 2024. Then you got Brady House, Yandy Morales, Robert Hassel. They could be knocking on the door by the end of the year as well. So I feel better about the future of the Nats in the field. It's really their rotation where I need to see some young guys come up and show that they can be, number one, number two type starters, because I just don't see that right now for the Nats. Their bullpen is going to be one of the worst in baseball. Hunter Harvey is the only reliever right now they have projected on FanGraphs with an ERA under 4. You look at the FanGraphs projections, they have them winning just 64.8 games. Postseason chances, 0.2%. Chance to win the division and World Series, 0.0%. So sorry to say it for Nats fans, your season is over before it even begins. That's the rundown on the NL East. Hopefully you enjoyed that deep dive. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more knowledge on each and every team going into the year and what should be another fun division another fun year in the division. Next, we'll touch on the Ohtani news and also the series in Korea. We'll do all of that here next. March Madness is here, which means the biggest moments in college basketball are happening. Be a part of the action on PrizePicks for both men's and women's college basketball. PrizePicks even offers injury insurance. That means that even if a player that you picked as part of your entry gets injured in the first half and doesn't return for the second half, that player projection won't count against you and the rest of your entry stays alive. PrizePicks offers weekly promotions that can help lead to big payouts, and PrizePicks is so simple to use. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. And if you're crazy like me and you want to go ahead and get in on some baseball action or some spring training action, they have that as well. All you got to do is pick more or less on stats like strikeouts, first inning runs, hits allowed, home runs, and much, much more over on PrizePicks. It really is just that simple. Pick 2 to 6 players or groups of players and decide if you think they'll get more or less on those stats that I mentioned a moment ago. It's a great chance to get in on the action for the baseball season coming up, and we can help you out here. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB, all undercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks. All right, let's quickly discuss the Ohtani news series. I went a little bit longer on the preview. Here's the way I understand it right now, and there's obviously going to be more come out about this. So his interpreter got caught up in an illegal gambling operation where he incurred at least $4.5 million in debt. He initially told ESPN that Ohtani helped him pay off that debt, transferring money straight from Ohtani's account. Ohtani's name was on those transfers. And then right as ESPN went to release the story saying that, Ohtani's attorney said that was all false and that actually Ohtani's interpreter stole that money out of his account to pay those debts. So the question is now, who is telling the truth? Did Ohtani help pay off his friend's gambling debt? If so, what kind of repercussions could we see for Ohtani, if any? And his interpreter, went on the record and saying Ohtani had nothing to do with these bets. He wasn't gambling on anything. Look, it's all up to interpretation right now. I tend to believe the initial reporting from the interpreter. It sounds pretty strange that all of a sudden when the story's going out that Ohtani's camp is like, this is not going to look good for us. Let's change the story and call him a thief. I don't know. That's all just public opinion at the moment until there's a further investigation. But that's where this stands right now. Did Ohtani knowingly and willingly pay off his interpreters' gambling debts for an illegal gambling operation, or was this money stolen out of Ohtani's accounts without Ohtani's knowledge? So I'll leave it up to you, whatever you want to believe right now. But like I said, there will be a big investigation going into this. And again, I don't really know what the repercussions are if Ohtani was just paying off this man's debt and he really had no involvement in the gambling part of it. I don't know. So there'll be a lot more to come out on this. The Dodgers and Padres split a 2-game series in Korea. Dodgers offense looks scary good, as you might imagine it would. Yamamoto got lit up, only pitched 1 inning, gave up 5 earned on Thursday morning as you woke up early to watch that. Thank goodness for DVR. So those two teams split a series out there to get the year kicked off. I mentioned earlier, JD Martinez signed a deal with the Mets, 1 year, $12 million. Michael Lorenzen got a 1 year, $4.5 million deal from the Rangers. That's some of the news of the day. Braves news, Jared Kelenic has 3 hits in his last 2 games and is getting more lift on the baseball. So that is great to see. Hopefully he's heating up just in time for the regular season. Maybe the Adam Duvall move, pushed him a little bit. Not that I think he really needed any. We are just 1 week away from opening day. This time next week, you'll be hearing a postcast from me and Grant McCauley talking about the first game of the year. So that is exciting. Dansby Swanson Award number 7 from 2017 to 2022. Gordon Beckham, Georgia Bulldog Award in 2016. Tommy LaStella, Reed Johnson, Brooks Conrad are some other players who wore it. Jeff Rancour wore it from 2005 to 2009. I had a jersey of Jeff Rancour with a number 7 on it for a while. JD Drew wore it. Keith Lockhart, Mark DeRosa, Kenny Lofton wore it for a year. Dwight Smith wore it from 1995 to 1996. And Joe Pepitone wore it for half a season in Atlanta. He was a 3-time All-Star for the Yankees, and he wore it during his brief stint with the Atlanta Braves. All right, that will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. I want to remind you again that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's now available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. You can find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Tomorrow, we'll have our weekly mailbag podcast, and on Monday, we enter opening day week on the Miners Monday segment. I'll tell you who will be the top prospect for the Atlanta Braves at the end of 2024. All right, make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Follow us on social media at shortstopball, at LockedOn_Braves. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.